Thank you guys so much for joining us today. So welcome to Dominion Payroll here. We're so thrilled to have so many of you guys in person and online to learn more about staying compliant in the workplace. Whether you're here in person or attending virtually, we can all benefit from expanding on our knowledge on HR and compliance. Throughout our time together here today, we encourage dialogue, ask questions. I know that Josh had said if there's anything that comes up when he is speaking, feel free to, raise your hand. We encourage that dialogue here today. And then for those of you that are online, feel free to drop questions into the chat and we will make sure to answer those. If it's not in person here today, we will follow up with those questions online. I know that Emily said that she will be sending out the recording and those questions and answers will go along with that. We're also going to be standing in the back after this is all over, so feel free to grab one of us and have that communication. We can answer those questions for you. And so once again, thank you so much for being a part of this enriching experience. Feel free to learn and connect with each other and those around you.
Hi, thanks, Ashley. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Sherry Lambert. Sherry served for 8 years as the president and CEO of Make-A-Wish of Greater Virginia. And I've had the pleasure, both Ashley and I, of getting to know her over the last year through our Boost HR consulting service. Sherry, along with her incredible team of staff and volunteers, work together to create life-changing wishes for children with critical illnesses during their darkest days. Several years ago, they actually did a study in which they determined that alumni parents, and medical providers all overwhelmingly agreed that the WISH experience was a necessary part of the medical treatment journey, improved the odds of survival, provided a support system, and better health outcomes. 99% of doctors say wishes helped relieve a family from traumatic stress, and 87% of alumni say their wish was a turning point in their treatment. Sherry, welcome. We're excited to hear about ways we can support your organization.
Thank you so much, Ashley and Jenica. It's been great working alongside Dominion Payroll. We certainly enjoy the services that it provides for all of our employees. So it's good to meet you all today in person. It is really a pleasure to join all of you to share a little bit about our mission at Make-A-Wish, and hopefully you will engage with us in some way. So Make-A-Wish was actually founded in 1980 when the very first wish was granted to a little boy named Chris. He wished to be a police officer. He had leukemia. Resonates with me because Chris and I were born in the same year. And so unfortunately, a few days after his wish was granted, he lost his battle to leukemia, but his mother is still involved and founded Make-A-Wish, the organization, in later on that year. She's still involved today in our mission, and we have 58 chapters across the United States and affiliates of Make-A-Wish around the world. I encourage you all to get involved, whether it's here in Virginia or at another local chapter of our organization. We have a really strong brand. Many of you may know Make-A-Wish and that we grant wishes. There are a few things that you may not be aware of. One is that a misconception is that we only grant wishes to kids that are terminally ill, and that is just not true. We grant life-changing wishes to children with critical illnesses, and if you think about a critical illness, it's something that is typically malignant in nature, something progressive, or something degenerative. And so these kids all have something that is life-threatening, that puts their life in jeopardy. We are extremely grassroots and rely heavily upon volunteers to execute our mission. So we're always recruiting wish granters to interview kids and get to the heart of their wish. There are 4 primary wish types. I wish to be like Chris. I wish to have. I wish to go, and I wish to meet. The #1 destination for our chapter and for many chapters of Make-A-Wish is to go to Walt Disney World. And so about 70% of our wishes involve some form of travel. So we rely upon the generosity of donors supporters to really implement our mission. One easy way to give back is to donate your unused airline miles to Make-A-Wish, because we can pool them together and they never expire, so we can then grant these travel wishes. Another way is to engage with us with our events, and I do want to talk a little bit about our Walk for Wishes today. And then I've asked a good friend and employee here at Dominion Payroll to join me to share a little bit about the impact of a wish firsthand. So our Walk for Wishes is May 18th here in Richmond at City Stadium. It is so easy to register and join us. It's a very family-friendly event. We have a touch-a-truck experience. We're going to have tacos on site. We also have Chick-fil-A that will be there, and anyone can do our walk. It is really about trying to raise as much funds as we can and celebrate the wishes and all those kids waiting for wishes. So last year, we granted 168 wishes here in our chapter. We today have 254 children between the ages of 2.5 and 18 waiting for their wish to be granted. And our average wish cost is $10,000. So we have a lot of funds that we need to raise. And so the walk is a great community way to do that and get involved with us. So I'd love to have Susan come up right now. We are really proud that Susan is going to be the team captain here at Dominion Payroll for the Dominion Payroll team, and that Dominion Payroll is going to be sponsoring our walk this year. So I met Susan a few years ago, and I really would love for her to share with you all a little bit about her Make-A-Wish story.
Thank you, Sherry. So hello, my name is Susan Nixon. I am the culture specialist here at Dominion Payroll, and I'm also a wish family. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about that. Back in 2006, our daughter was diagnosed with a brain tumor, which was life-threatening. So Make-A-Wish swooped in and granted her a wish. Her wish was to go, and she wanted, as any typical teenage girl, she had a crush at that time on Orlando Bloom. Posters were all over our house. Needless to say, that was her wish. You guys came through, sent our whole family of 4 to California on the set of Pirates of the Caribbean. Very, very special. She's doing wonderful now. She's actually an RN in the neuro unit. She's a travel nurse, and she's currently in Montana. So Make-A-Wish really gave our family hope in a time of desperation, and we are so grateful, and we hope to see you out at the walk.
Thank you, Susan. And I just want to say there are many, many other families and wish kids that are in similar situations to what Susan described. We have seen kids in our community who've had other wishes. One of them wished to be in a fighter jet, and he is now in the Air Force. And the impact of the wish does bring hope, strength, and joy to a child and to an entire family, but the community too. And I think that our mission of together we create life-changing wishes for children with critical illness, it is really the together part that matters most. It's bringing everyone together to experience that hope, that sense of normalcy that a wish provides, and knowing that a wish is really a necessity. So the QR code is here on the slide, and we've got some flyers in the back of the room that you could take with you, but we hope you will all consider engaging with us for this walk, whether it's virtually or in person, and help us grant these 254 wishes. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sherry. And so now I get the pleasure of introducing our speaker for today. And so that will be Josh Ard here. And he is the Director of Business Development for 2 lines of services within Dominion Payroll, which is our DP Boost HR program, as well as our DP Assist program. He has previously held roles in which he has served as a strategic HR business partner and an HR consultant with a wide variety of clients. He has a SHRM certification and 11 plus years of providing HR support and training throughout the Southeast. He is out of our Dominion Payroll Carolinas office, which is located in Columbia, South Carolina. And so please join me in welcoming Josh Hard.
Thank you, Ashley. And thanks to everybody for coming out in spite of the weather. You know, this is pretty rough, so we really appreciate it. We've got a good bit of material that I want to go over today, but I will not attempt to solve HR problems in one day, much less 45 minutes. So, but I want to have an open discussion. If you do, like Ashley mentioned, if you do have questions, feel free to raise your hand. I think that's one of the best ways to learn about HR. You know, we share a lot of the same issues, a lot of the same struggles. So I think it's good for the other participants as well. Let's go ahead and jump into it. Just to have an overview, what we'll do is just generally talk about, you know, what is HR compliance or employment law compliance? You know, we all know it's out there, but often I find out in my experiences that business owners, managers, supervisors just don't know what they don't know. You know, there's no one really knocking on your door saying, hey, you know, you're going to need to start this next quarter or else. So it's, you know, it's just a very confusing field. That's why we spend a lot of our time trying to dissect what the complexities of HR. We'll talk about the roles and responsibilities for supervisors. You know, I think that's one thing that we all share in this room is we have some management or supervisor responsibilities, and that could be one employee, that could be hundreds of employees. You know, HR is one of the few things like taxes that all businesses share in some regard. We'll touch on a little bit of discrimination and retaliation because that is a hot topic and has been for years, and don't see that slowing down. So we want to make sure that you're aware of what that is. We'll go into navigating the employment life cycle. We're all in the employment life cycle right now. What that does is that starts with recruitment and ends with the termination. Termination could be a retirement. You know, that just means the end of employment. And we'll look at all the phases of that employment life cycle and talk about some of the tripwires that are set up within that cycle and how to navigate it. We'll look at HR documentation. You know, I know everybody's heard about it, but we're going to just talk about how important it is and how to develop a strategy to be consistent throughout your company too. Performance reviews, we'll talk very in general. Performance reviews, I guess you could have a very formal program, but you're also reviewing performance every day for your employees. So we want you to have a good, consistent strategy so that you can make informed decisions. Discipline termination, the fun part. It unfortunately is an inevitable part of being a manager. You know, if I tell some of our supervisors that, you know, if you don't know how to do that, or if you aren't confident in that, then you really aren't fulfilling your duties as a supervisor. You know, as uncomfortable as it is, because we're probably emotionally attached to these employees, you know, we know where they might go to church, we know their families. So it makes it difficult, but it's also, we don't want that to interfere with what you're supposed to do as a manager. And then we'll look at the federal and state landscape of HR. You know, there are a few changes that are going to be going on this year. We'll touch on it. If we don't get through all the material, I know that we're going to be sharing the presentation with everyone. Like I said, I encourage questions. And if you do have questions, we'll be around afterwards so we can address those. Takeaways that I would like for everyone. You know, gaining an awareness of HR compliance is half the battle. You know, just you being here is part of that. You understand that it's a very important part of business or a very important part of your role, you know, but without awareness, you really don't have a respect for it. And without respect, you can actually get yourself in some very difficult situations. Learn the importance of HR compliance. to build a healthy workplace culture. You know, that's what we all want. That's what we're all striving for. So if we can make sure to shore up compliance, your employees are going to feel more comfortable. You know, it's going to create a more positive environment. And because as we all know, if things start to go bad, it's very contagious within a workforce. Expand your ability to confidently advise and manage your employees. You know, we don't want you to get to a certain part in that employment life cycle where you have to address issues, but you don't feel confident doing so. You know, that's a terrible spot to be. And I think we've all been there. If you manage people, like myself, I've been there before, you know, and so we want to look at measures to take to well position ourselves in the event that we do need to make decisions. And ultimately, we want to protect you, the company, your employees from the risk of HR or improper HR compliance. And, you know, just talking about the complexities of HR and how, you know, we always say it makes it very difficult for a business owner, for a supervisor. You know, it seems to be that there's always mandates, regulations, laws that are added on the state and federal level, but they never seem to take them away, you know. So sometimes these laws may be redundant. Sometimes you may have the same law on the federal level and the state level. You know, what do you do there? You know, a funny thing just to kind of demonstrate the complexities of or how awkward HR compliance can be, let me ask you a few questions. And just with the show of hands and online, I guess you can do the wavy hand. But during an interview, can you ask someone that you're interviewing, can you ask them, you know, where do you go to church? Right? Can you ask them, are you married? So I'm seeing a lot of no, you know. Can you ask them, you know, cleverly, you know, when did you graduate high school? Trying to get around the age question. So you're saying no, right? There's actually no law that forbids you asking those questions. You just can't use the answers to make your decisions. So what do we do, or what do we suggest doing? Don't ask the question. So that's just kind of an example of how intricate that HR compliance could be. You know, we're all very good at our own respective professions. HR is kind of just thrown in there. You know, oftentimes we delegate that to our most loyal employee that we can trust, that will maintain confidence, you know, but we really aren't prepared to do that. Now, you prepared for your own profession, you know, you're good at that, you're successful at that. We want you to get that way with HR. You know, you have to ultimately be a professional of HR. So we just want you to be conscious of it. What's HR compliance? Like I was saying earlier, it's a collection of state, federal laws, mandates, regulations, guidances, you know, that govern every part of the employment relationship, every part from start to finish throughout the entire life cycle. I think that HR laws actually, you know, they actually appeared first well over 130 years ago, actually, in India, interestingly enough. And then about 1904, I think that's when the state started to adopt, you know, some HR regulations, primarily for safety reasons. You know, that was when manufacturers were producing products at an incredible rate. And one of the downsides to that was safety was not paid attention to. So that was some of the first HR laws came about then. We'll talk about responsibilities of your role, your position. You know, HR law, people ask me, you know, how do I know what I'm supposed to do? And everyone in this room probably has their own set of unique federal and state laws that you have to abide by, because you're all different industries. You all are different size companies. So you have thresholds in HR law. It could be 4, 5, 10, and I'm talking about employee count, number of employees, because that's really all that HR surrounds is head count. How many locations do you have? Where are you located? You know, there are certain states out there that may be more business friendly on the HR side of things. There are certain states that are very difficult to navigate the HR compliance side of things. So, You have your federal set of laws, you have your respective state set of laws. You could actually have county, which we refer to as local. You could actually have city. You know, there are certain companies that on the payroll side of things, we might have to pay federal, state, county, and a city tax, you know, per payroll period. I mean, you're talking about that. I mean, that's pretty complex. Now, federal contractor is going to be fairly rare, but do make sure that you are not a federal contractor. And if you are, then do your proper research. We dealt with a lot of community banks throughout the Southeast, and in our research, we discovered back in, gosh, it was probably 17 or 18, that they were actually federal contractors in certain regards. You know, not under the Davis-Bacon Act, but certain laws that required affirmative action looped banks in due to the affiliation with the FDIC. You know, that was something that the banks at the time were not aware of. So that's certain things that you have to do with the hiring process, you know, on the onboarding process that you have to do. So just make sure, do your research. Most of you, I would guarantee, probably aren't. But you could be surprised if you have any affiliation as a contractor or a subcontractor with a federal contractor or with a federal agency. So, like I said earlier, it's your professional responsibility as a supervisor to make sure that you understand very well what HR is and how you should conduct yourself within that role. I don't know if everybody can see this at the top right, but you know, being a supervisor is easy. You know, it's like riding a bike, except the bike's on fire, you're on fire, and everything is on fire. You know, I'm sure we've been in those difficult situations too, and it's one of those like, gosh, can I just go back to doing what I do every day? Why do I have to deal with this? You know, but we want to give you the confidence to understand that that's part of your role. You know, it's never going to go away. Employees are going to have to be provided with guidance, discipline, and sometimes termination. So we want to make sure that you're confident about it. Personal liability, or actually I skip one up. Supervisors are mission critical for the company to have proper HR compliance. You know, if you were to look at how well a company does adhering to HR compliance, they're only as good as their supervisors. You know, because those are your risk points. You could have multiple locations, multiple supervisors, whether they're supervising departments, groups of employees, locations, whatever. Not only do they have to actually, you know, perform within, you know, the proper parameters of HR compliance, all of these supervisors have to be consistent among themselves, you know. So you've got your personal responsibility, or if there's another supervisor at another location, then you also have to be in line with each other, because any type of inconsistency in HR is referred to as discrimination. You know, it's kind of one of those things, well, tell me I'm wrong. You know, you do things one way here, you do things another way here. Why is that? It must be because of this. And so we don't want to run across those situations. So, you know, really reiterate with your supervisors or your peers, if you are a supervisor, that it is imperative that you be consistent in your strategy when managing employees. We'll talk about a little bit of discrimination. We'll touch on that several times throughout today. And we're talking about actual and perceived, intentional or unintentional. You know, we oftentimes don't, and I run across this a lot. The employer has no idea or no intent to discriminate against an employee or an applicant, but it just happened, you know. So it wasn't something that there was no ill will, you know. There was no, you know, they didn't mean to do that. There was no strategy behind it, but it happened. And discrimination is illegal even if it's unintentional, you know, which is you know, unfortunate, because I assume everybody in this room is just, you know, above board and a very good supervisor. So, but you have to understand to perceived. Think about how your employees are viewing you. You know, think about what your employees are going through. You know, each employee's got their own unique situation. So understand the shoes that they're standing in. You know, that's going to help you be a better manager. You know, you can still be consistent in how you treat all your employees, but understand where they are. How are they viewing you? You know, we actually had a unique situation where, you know, it was probably a 20-employee orthodontist called up and had an issue with one employee. And this employee was a great employee. It was the first person that you see when you become a new patient. I think it's the intake, or I forgot what the title was. And he said, I really have an issue. You know, she's a great employee, gets along with the clients, the kids wonderfully. But she shows up late and she leaves early, you know, and I'm like, well, that's, you know, that is an issue. One of the common issues that we probably hear is related to attendance and or tardiness. I said, well, you know, Dr. So-and-so, at the time I said, well, the problem is here is you really don't have a problem with one employee. You've got a problem with the 18 that are watching how you allow that, you know. So always be conscious of perception of your employees. And that's why if you can maintain consistency, you can avoid some of those tripwires. Let's see, let's go ahead. This is what I was talking about in the employment life cycle. You know, it's funny, you know, you're thinking applicants, gosh, they don't even work for us. You know, how can HR compliance apply to applicants? Yeah, it definitely does. You know, when you're interviewing people, the whole point of the non-discrimination or anti-discrimination laws, whatever they may be on the EEOC side of things or on the state side of things, it is to treat everyone equitably. It's to give them an equal chance to earn a position, a promotion, or consideration for anything employment based on the metrics of their employment. So you were supposed to remove those other factors that you'll be very, very well aware of. You just have to not include them in your decision making. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but bringing on, you know, hiring someone, doing a background check, make sure that you're getting the proper documents signed. You know, the Fair Credit Reporting Act says that you have to disclose and receive an authorization before looking into any type of background. And we'll go into background checks a little bit more too, because the ban the box deal is becoming very, very popular. I think we're about half the states now have banned the box when you're asking about criminal history on employment applications. But, you know, this is the hiring, the E-Verify. The E-Verify is probably going to ramp up significantly, is what I'm anticipating, is because we have, as you're all aware, just watching the news, there has been an influx of what would be, I'm referred to them as illegal immigrants, because that's how E-Verify refers to it. You know, when you E-Verify someone, you take your I-9, the informational I-9, you input it into this system, and the E-Verify system tells you, are they legally allowed to work in the United States? You know, you get a yes, keep going, or you get a red flag, and you may have, you know, circumstances that you have to address. I think this is going to become more prevalent. We're already seeing, you know, even around in South Carolina, we're already seeing that we're receiving applicants that don't have legal status. And there's also a presence of kids in public schools that are moving in starting mid-year. So we're seeing, we're going to have to deal with this, you know, so make sure that you're good to go when it comes to your E-Verify. Because I think the E-Verify system is probably going to be changing this year too. It's supposed to be an upgrade. I don't know what that means when the federal government talks about upgrading software, but we'll see. And then moving on to evaluation and then termination. Document. How many people have heard of that? You know, and I'm going to back up here and talk very broadly about this. This isn't just documented, because what you're thinking right now is problematic employees, right? You're thinking, because I get it all the time, we got this issue with this employee, but we haven't documented anything, you know, and we don't know what to do. Well, let's back up, you know, actually look a little bit broader. Documentation is key to HR, and that's not just your problematic employees. That's your onboarding documents. And I'm talking about retention that can be done on the digital side or paper side, hey, we all have our ways of doing things. Both are legitimate, but we want to make sure that you've got a document retention policy. First off, each type of document, whether it's an application, an I-9, benefits enrollment statement, each one has their own retention guidelines. It could be anywhere from 1 year to 7 years for about 95%. If you have an OSHA-related injury, it can go from 10 to 30 years of maintaining retention of a document. I-9s are also supposed to be stored separately. I think that's something that everybody's come pretty familiar with. The same thing with any type of health-related document. So make sure that you really got a consistent document retention policy. And look, say if you're supposed to retain a particular document for a year, on the 366th day, shred it. That's part of the retention, is to also dispose of properly. If you aren't required to keep something around, and also you don't want to get rid of something that may be beneficial for an existing employee that you need to retain, but that's what the policy is going to entail, is also the proper disposal of these documents. Moving on, the retained securely and privately, I think I touched on, you can do that in a vertical file cabinet. You can do that on a shared drive. You can do that on a desktop computer. Just make sure that it is secure and it's private, so only the eyes of who needs to see it can see it. Employee files are discoverable. Managing a fair amount of companies, we would receive periodically. It cost an attorney, I think, $25 to subpoena the entire employee record. And so it's really, it's not much skin off his or her back. All they do is it certified, one of those serious documents that you get, and you're like, before you read the first word, you're like, this doesn't look good. Kind of that IRS format. But you have to adhere to it. It is a legitimate subpoena. And what they want is they want to see everything, because an attorney often doesn't care. This is kind of just a side deal. These attorneys that you see that can afford billboards on major interstates, they're it's a lucrative business. There's a lot of money in that business. So they often, you'll have an employee, go knock on an attorney's door and say, hey, I've been wrongfully terminated. That's very popular. That attorney cares nothing about what they said. They just need them to knock on the door, because all they're going to do is they're just going to subpoena all the records, and they're going to find something that's wrong. They're going to find something where you didn't properly do something. You don't have an I-9, you don't have a disclaimer or a handbook acknowledgement. They know what to look for. They also know where is the money. So that's why you'll see that claims, the highest awarded claims are often like the discrimination, retaliation, because that's where the money is, for those attorneys. Proper documentation enables effective management. So this isn't talking about your document retention policy. This is just talking about how you document how your employees perform. You constantly have to review the performance of your employees, right? That's just your job. You got to tell them what they're supposed to do when they don't do it, and you need to be recording this. And it doesn't have to be something so formal that you won't do it. See, I totally do not agree with that, and we'll talk about that here in a minute, about just creating an employee log. You take a sheet of paper with each employee's name, on the top, and then what you do is you write down not just when they struggle or when they were absent, no call, no show. We also want to document or record their successes, because what this does is, gosh, we can't remember what we had for lunch yesterday. So what this does, when it comes time to review that employee or provide feedback for that employee, you pull your log out, and then oftentimes it's pretty enlightening, because you're probably emotionally charged up because they've just done something else, but you pull that employee log out and you go, wow, You know, I forgot about all these other things. So it's a very simple, easy process that, you know, in my experience, I've got a ton of great feedback on. You know, it's something so simple, and you're like, wait, paper? You know, you don't necessarily have to do it on paper. You can have a file. You can have an Excel spreadsheet with each tab is one of your employees. And so what that allows you to do is just document it on a daily basis. That makes your performance reviews a breeze, because then you know dates, you know everything. Trying to go back and remember something that happened a year ago, no, it's not gonna. Even if you can remember it, it's not gonna be clear. So going to performance review. This, you know, we've actually gone into employers before and reviewed their performance review process and told them that they need to stop immediately. You know, what you're doing right now is not good for anybody. It's actually probably gonna get you in trouble. You know, like when we actually rolled a process out, let them manage it, let the supervisors manage it, and then the next week we shredded it because the training was not proper. They didn't quite understand. Because so what this is you just actually created something that you didn't even need to do. You didn't get the advantage of improving performance. You just set a trap for yourself. Because when that document becomes discoverable, or that employee is disciplined or terminated, if that performance review doesn't indicate the same thing, there's inconsistency there. You know, so then it becomes, well, it must have happened because of this. So adopt the sustainable performance review process. You know, that can be a software program. That can be something very simple. What you have to do is make sure that you're going to keep it up. You know, people ask me, well, how often do we need to, you know, review performance? You know, do we need to do it monthly? I'm like, oh, no, goodness. I mean, I'm sure everybody in here probably dreads it. It's just not fun, you know, but make it easier for yourself. You know, give something that's sustainable. Do it at least annually. You know, quarterly, I think that kind of depends on your business, you know, how much breadth you have with staff. But I will tell you that employees yearn for feedback. And I think you're going to find out that as younger generations fill the workforce, they even more so want feedback. And you know, how can you expect them to do things differently if you're not providing them with guidance? So it's a very simple concept, but most managers can't stand it. So make sure that if you have something, make sure it's sustainable, because the last thing we want to do is you get to the last day and you're forcing, you know, you really kind of made the process where it's not effective anymore. So, and if you want to, start slow and then get more aggressive, but make sure that you can sustain it. Look at job performance versus the expectations of that position. You know, that's really all you have to worry about. You know, their attitude outside of the office at events, you know, or what you've heard about that's happening in the community really has nothing to do with their job. You know, will it seep into their job? Oftentimes it will, yes. But when you're doing your performance review, you're literally looking at the job description and you're looking to see, are they meeting these expectations? Where are they, where are the downfalls? Where are they struggling? You know, how can I provide corrective action, or not correct, or recommendations on how to improve this? And then how long should I expect that this improvement will happen? You know, so you're giving them parameters, you're providing expectations. So now, not only did they know what to expect, you get to the next performance review, you know what to expect. You know, well, last year we expected you would do this. There's been no progress made. So now we may have to, or you've done great. This isn't an issue anymore. You know, thank you. Managers must buy into the process. Again, you are only as good as your team of managers. So if you don't have manager buy-in, you're going to be by default inconsistent. You know, you're going to have a group of employees. Say if you take 8 branches of a community bank and you've got 2 branches that do not receive adequate or effective reviews. In the whole group of employees, they're being treated differently. We don't want that to ever happen. We want it to be consistent. And there's a multitude of reasons why we don't want it to be inconsistent, but I don't want you to have to understand that. Just worry about being consistent, then you won't have to worry about the tripwires of inconsistency. There it is, maintain consistency throughout your entire workforce. There's the create employee log to document struggles and successes. This does sound simple, but it's very, I mean, just from my experience over the last 11, 12 years, this is very effective and it's simple. Make sure to provide examples. So not just you need to be better with, client relations or client interaction. Use an example of when they were not, and what they need to, or how they could improve that. You need to be very specific. Vagueness is not good on a performance review, or even, and like I said, I keep saying performance review, but remember, this is everyday interaction. So when you're talking to your employees, don't be vague. Give them specific things about what they did well. I found out that supervisors do not do that enough. They always say, for problematic employees, this is what you do wrong, but when good things happen, they don't, say, hey, you did a great job, so make sure that that's part of performance review. It's not just identifying what's wrong. Give clear expectations, monitor, and evaluate. So if you provide those clear expectations and everyone understands, it makes your job as a supervisor that much easier. So that way you can go back and say, okay, what were the expectations? All you're doing is you're just seeing how well it went. It makes it much easier for you. Termination, this is the fun time. Termination, like I said earlier, is just an inevitable part of business. It can be voluntary, where someone decides to leave a company. It can be involuntary, where the employer decides that they're going to leave the company. This is something you're never going to get away from, so you may as well get as comfortable as possible with. What makes this difficult is emotions. Naturally, if you've got a heart, you're going to be, have some sort of emotion in there, some more so than others. But naturally, you're going to be attached to this employee. That's why, we used to consult with a lot of executives, and they would call us and they knew what to do. But we would advise them, yes, this is what you need to do. But it was very easy for us to know the right answer because we don't know that individual. We're very objective. We're not attached. And so they know exactly what they should do. It's just difficult, because this is an awkward situation. I mean, ending of employment is one of the most emotional times that you can have in your life. This just across the board. If employees are managed effectively, termination should never be a surprise. So if you're managing them effectively throughout their employment, most employees, which we find out, have you ever had an employee to where things just weren't going right, and then you were thinking about termination, then all of a sudden they resigned? They knew it. Everyone, the ones that act like they don't know it are pros. Those are the ones you got to watch out for. They act surprised. That's a red flag, because if you've told them, hey, this is how you've been doing thus far, and they really aren't getting it. And look, all jobs aren't for all people. Realize that too. It's okay. Sometimes it's better to let someone know that, hey, this is not a good fit. It allows them to move to another place of employment that could be better for them. Don't let them sit there and struggle when you know that this just isn't going to work out. Most employees that we find that are terminated should have been terminated 2 weeks or a month prior. But there's that delay, of just waiting. So if you, in your first 90 days, which introductory evaluation periods are sort of going away, but if coming out of the gates, 3 weeks may be a little aggressive, but if you're 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and you're like, this is just not good for the company, and I don't think it's good for the employee either, then address it. Just go ahead and do it, because the only worst thing that you can do is wait, because that creates more time for more things to go wrong. And it also furthers that time that you're going to get to your next hire. Yes, it's going to cost you money, but waiting is going to cost you more. So go ahead and jump on it. create a plan, don't make impulse decisions. This is something, I mean, I've screamed at the executives that we work with, owners, supervisors, like I get some pretty emotional phone calls, you know, so-and-so just did this and I'm gonna let them go right now, you know. I'm like, I get it, but I mean, they've been causing problems for 6 months. What's a day? You know, hold on, back up. What you're not gonna do is go fire them on the spot right now. You know, that's when you had a problematic employee that's now trapping the employer, because how we react to that could get us in trouble. But we weren't the initial problem. You know, it's one of those that you just want to shake, you know. Don't let them cause problems for you as a professional HR person, you know. Don't let them create problems that weren't there. We always tell, anytime they call it, and we get it all the time, no, I want them gone before the end of the day. I'm like, that's not a good idea. You know, I don't care. I'm not going to tolerate this in my business. I totally understand. You know, you've got standards that you expect. They're not following it. You know, I totally understand. We're going to do it tomorrow. You know, we're going to do it at the end of the day. Evaluate all the circumstances that surround that situation. And that could be, who is the individual? What is the individual's history with the company? Is there an outstanding workers' comp claim right now? If there is, do not terminate. Are there other things going on? Has this employee had issues with pay? You know, you want to understand what you're about to get into, because it's the riskiest part of the employment life cycle, is when you terminate employment. You think you know what's going to happen, you never know. You know, determine all the risk involved. You know what you're getting into. Arrange an in-person meeting with the employee, and I think this is very important. And also when possible. You know, this is in our hybrid remote environment. This isn't always possible, but I do think face-to-face remotely can be done too. But I think as a manager, you know, as a consultant, we would not come in and terminate your employee. We have a couple times, but it was a very almost dangerous situation, so we were helping. But we think that managers should do that. You're the supervisor, you're the manager, you have that relationship, and it's your role, it's your job, you know. So arrange an in-person meeting, ask them to meet, and this, I'll just tell you how we typically would do it. We would say, ask them to meet, don't give them a heads up. You know, end of day is a pretty preferable time. And when you meet with them, we're going to have a document already designed that's going to say exactly what's about to happen. And what we do is we say, thanks for meeting with us. Well, I would like for you to read this document. By the time they get to the end of the document, they're no longer employed with the company. So, and because it tells them effective this date or at the end of today, you know, you're no longer employed with the company. And so it takes that burden off of the manager. The memo just did all the talking. And then what you're going to have is you're going to have employees that are going to go, but why? You know, but I did not, you know, try to justify this or want to argue about it or think that there's an opportunity to retain their position. But when you're going into that meeting, you as managers or your management team, you've already made the decision. So the less you talk, the better. You know, we always tell our supervisors or executives and say, if they're asking questions, you just, as awkward as it may be, you have to keep repeating that the memo or the letter speaks for itself. You know, I'm sorry, the decision's already been made. You know, because the more you talk, every word that you say during that meeting, you're providing them with ammunition to shoot you with. So you do not want to engage in a conversation with an employee at that time. You know, they're no different than the applicant walking down the sidewalk out there that doesn't work for your company any longer. And I hate to be cold about that. It sounds very cold, doesn't it? I mean, I even hear myself say it, but that's the best way to protect yourself and your company. You know, if it's going to happen anyway, there's no time for discussion now. Remain compassionate. It's a very difficult time, even for awful employees. You know, everybody has families. You know, it's going to be tough for them. Realize that. Show compassion. what we want to do, what our goal is, we don't want anything to arise after this termination or after this separation. You know, we don't want that terminated employee to cost us additional money when they don't work here, when they're, you know, saying things that weren't done properly. So we want to show compassion that and show professionalism. You know, our goal is at that time, and this is all going to be dependent upon the circumstances of the separation, but our goal is for them to exit without incident. And we will ask them of the letter. We usually ask them, provide them with a copy of it. We want them to take the letter with them. If my former boss, he would always say, you know, he said, I don't care if you write it down on a piece of toilet paper. He said, say exactly why you're terminating them. You know, you have legitimate, justifiable reasons for the separation, because and provide that to them. Ask them to sign it. If they don't want to sign it, that's fine. You know, just note that, but let them take a copy. If you don't let them take a copy, they're going to be very creative when they walk out of the door as to why you separated from them. And we don't want them to make that decision. You know, that's how you maintain the control. So, you know, Virginia is at will, South Carolina is at will. So a lot of the states in the Southeast are going to be at will employment. And you all know what that means. That just means that you can terminate without notice, cause, or reason. You know, that it allows the employer a little flexibility. When an attorney hears that, they go, uh-oh, what's up, man? You know, what, at will, by who? Oh, they must be hiding something. You know, in the 11, 12 years that I've been doing this, we used at will for a termination one time. And that was out of desperation because it was a very, very unique situation. But have legitimate reasons, you know. Don't just say, oh, you're out of here. You know, that is not the way to conduct yourself. You know, save yourself some heartache and your company. All right, let's keep moving. What are we doing on? It's not cut off. Left? Oh, goodness. All right, discrimination in the workplace, and I'll move a little quicker, but like I said, we're going to provide this this deck to you. And I put a lot of information on some of these slides, more so than I typically would, because I knew it was going to go home with you, and then you could have it as a reference. So under discrimination in the workplace, let's just talk about that generically. That's just disparate treatment of employees. You know how to solve it? Treat everybody the same. There's so many protected classes that are identified in so many different laws. It's practically impossible to understand that. So you know how you avoid it? Treat everyone the same. You know, look at what they're supposed to be doing for your in this particular role. You know, look at their career. You know, their tenure with your company, maybe their tenure with other companies. You know, these are all measurable employment statistics that you can lean on. You know, but try to keep within that scope. That way, you don't have to worry about, oh, you didn't do this because of my age. You know, when we talk about protected classes, essentially everyone's in a protected class. There's actually only one unprotected class. It's a white Caucasian male under 40. But so let's just assume everyone's protected. You know, don't try to decipher, oh, under this law, well, maybe I can do it. No, you know, just treat everyone fairly and the same across the board, and you avoid a lot of heartache. And like I said, that starts with the applicants all the way through their life cycle. This is just a graphic showing that claims submitted to the EOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. It probably doesn't surprise a lot of people that race is on the top there. Retaliation's at the very top because retaliation is usually a combination of claims. It's when the employer actually made a decision because of the behavior of that employee. Going back to what I said earlier, don't let any employee compromise your professionalism. You know, don't let them trip you up. You know, so we'll keep going. How to avoid it? Focus on those metrics. If you can't measure it, you know, you might know, well, gosh, I know his or her brother, and you know, he just got out of jail last week. You know, but you're talking about something that really has nothing to do with that employee or that applicant. Now, if we all think right now, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to look at what's best for the company, right? And we don't want to take that risk. We know that this probably ain't going to work out well, where it has to be measurable. Use metrics that you can lean on that are legal, instead of worrying about things outside of that scope. Look at tenure, education, professional certifications, and performance if you're looking at promoting someone. Anti-discrimination training, I think that's very important. My father-in-law worked for 45 years for a cogen plant, a power plant, essentially. They get trained on tag out principles for like control panels, these massive control panels. I mean, he says he can do the training because he's gone through 42 years. I think it's every 6 months. We know why they do it, so they don't get electrocuted. They know what the training is, but you constantly have to reiterate that. Instinctually, as human beings, we are built to show some sort of discrimination. I'm not talking about negative or adverse, but there was a study that a university did, decades back, where they took toddlers, barely walking children, 4 or 5 races. All of the children congregated to their own race or their own color. You know why? They feel comfortable. These aren't bad kids. These aren't anything they're doing. So you're wired to instinctually show some sort of discriminatory behavior. And I'm not talking about when it pertains to ethnicity or race and things like that. I'm just talking about looking at 2 people through 2 different lenses. So make sure you're conscious of that. Have training, because training is good to reiterate how to avoid these situations. This is one thing last thing we're going to be able to touch on. This is, I think, probably one of the biggest things of 2024. How many people in here, are y'all familiar with exempt, non-exempt? Yeah, it's awful. I mean, out of the gates, just naming it exempt, non-exempt, confusion, But if you can just remember, add from overtime to exempt from overtime, non-exempt from overtime, then it helps out a little bit. The exemption, determine whether an employee is exempt or not, is actually a 2-part test. One's going to be compensation, the salary test, and the second is going to be the duties test. So the biggest change this year that is about to happen, is proposed right now, but it's expected that the final rule is going to come out in April. And if the final rule is accepted, then 60 days it will be implemented. So what that means is, as of right now, if you had someone that's under $35,000 compensation annually, then they are actually owed overtime. You don't even have to go to step 2 of the test. They didn't pass that step 1. They're below the salary threshold, which is currently $35,568. Then they have to be paid overtime by federal law per work week, and it's all measured on a 7-day work week. Any minute worked over 40 hours has to be time and a half. What is about to happen is they're going to increase this to $55,068. What that means is anybody making below that across the board gets paid overtime. And this is more, it's going to affect more industry, or some industries more than others. But a 35 to 55 range is a very popular salary range. I mean, big among retail, so be very conscious of this. This is something you're going to have to do a lot of research on, because if you have employees within this window right now of 35 to 55, you're either going to be, if you do nothing, they're going to earn overtime, when this passes. If you don't want them to earn overtime, then you're going to have to look at other decisions. Do we increase their salary above the threshold? Do we turn them into an hourly employee? How will this affect their benefits if just salaried employees get benefits? So it's a very complex situation. This first happened, and I will tell you too, it could be likely that this does not go forward, because you got to think of how much of an impact this is going to have nationally. This happened, the first time that it happened was it was proposed back in 2016. and we knew it was coming. We got with all of our employers and we did a ton of work, and we had to raise salaries. And then, the tricky thing about raising the salary is you raise the salary to get above the threshold. Now that person that was at 60, now you have salary compression. You're bumping up against somebody that potentially has more tenure, higher position. So when you look at this, don't think it's going to be something that's going to take 5 minutes. You may have a simple situation. I highly doubt it. But make sure that you understand this, because if you don't properly pay an employee overtime, they can go look back 3 years and actually the employee gets paid. There can be treble damages. So this is something that you don't want to slip up on. In 2016 though, 1 week before it was supposed to go into effect, they canceled everything. So the only people that benefited were the procrastinators. So if this is postponed again, because I guarantee you've got a lot of people fighting over this right now. If this is postponed again, don't shoot me. But I want you to go ahead and be prepared. Even if it is postponed, you can look at it. It's going to probably happen in the next couple of years. This also means that this level of 55, 68 is going to increase every 3 years. That's hard to imagine. It really is. It's almost like the DOL and the Fair Labor Standards Act want everybody to be compensated overtime, and it's just sort of the goal. So it could mean, we did this years ago. We had to move tenured employees to an hourly status, a 30-year employee to an hourly status, because she fell within that range. She was not happy. They look at it as a demotion. So you're going to have to educate them that, if you look at the medical industry, they all want to be paid hourly. They get it. It's better for them, But if you take somebody, a tenured employee, from salary to an hourly, not changing the pay, they're still taking home the same thing. They're not going to take that well. So be very conscious of them, how they're going to react to that. I've got 3 different scenarios that you're going to see right here, pros and cons for each scenario. But do go through that analysis for yourself. Make sure that you fully understand that, because this is just dangerous territory. And it's not like you can justify it. With records, it's either you did or you didn't. We report compensation to multiple state and federal agencies on a per payroll basis. So there's no hiding that. It is what it is. So you've got 3 different options to show. The state, I know that one of the biggest things we're seeing right now is human trafficking training. I think that started actually in Virginia last year, maybe mid-year. I think that Tennessee is bringing that on now. I think this is something that it's sort of a domino effect. When you see certain states doing it, you'll also see other states are starting to get on follow each other. Paid leave, that could be unpaid or paid leave for medical reasons. Right now, if you're over 50, you have to follow the Family Medical Leave Act. If you don't, you're lucky, because you don't have to jump through those hoops. But a lot of states are putting out to where employers are going to have to provide leave for medical reasons, sometimes providing paid leave for medical reasons. So if this isn't in your policy right now, when you're looking down the road, start to think about this. Last one we'll end with right now is time. Okay. Ban the box laws. I'm sure you probably heard about this, but I think it's about half the states. And if you can't see, gray is no established laws. And then the orange or burnt orange is they do have current laws in place. What this means is typically checking someone's background is one of the few things you can do pre-offer. You can do it before employment. You can't make them take a drug test before employment. That's a condition of employment, if they were to fail a drug test, but that's medical stuff, has to be done post-offer. This is one of the few things, and gosh, we've avoided a lot of heartache. Checking a background, just running a criminal background check, you could do on the application. You get that authorization and disclosure on the application process. What we do, we screen the background, then we get back in touch with the employer and say, hey, everything looks good, or we go, wow, we never saw this coming. You know, this isn't a good candidate. So what you do is you pass on an applicant rather than having to terminate an employee. What they're trying to get rid of that. And I think it's largely part of the initiative to reemploy formerly incarcerated individuals. And look, I think that's a great thing. I've seen some incredible statistics of formerly incarcerated employees have some of the highest retention rates in companies now. You know, that's a whole nother day. But look at your application process. Are you asking, you know, the questions? It used to be that what you would have you been convicted of a felony or a misdemeanor? You could have that too. Stay away from arrest. Those are not convictions. You know, they could have been falsely arrested, you know, and that'll be expunged later on. We don't want to make an employment decision based on that. But ultimately, this ban the box means we have to remove that from the application process. So the employer can still run a background check, but it's going to be more like a drug test. It's going to be post-offer. They're already an employee. Now, if bad results come back, then you didn't meet the expectations of this position. So then you're having to term an employee. So it makes it a little bit more administratively difficult for employers. You know, you can still maintain standards of, hey, I don't want somebody who's got a theft charge, you know, operating in the vault. You know, that makes sense. Beware also of credit checks. If credit checks do not apply to the position that they're taking or applying for, they shouldn't be run. You know, they have found in courts that can have a disparate impact on certain groups of individuals. So we don't want to go there. So if you have somebody who's going to be handling cash, that makes sense, right? I mean, run a credit check. I mean, if they've got a horrible history of never paying a bill and they don't know how to maintain finances, you probably don't want them in that role. You know, CFO, probably not, you know. So if it makes sense or relates to the job, it's perfectly admissible. But beware that this is probably coming right now. I know just here in Virginia, there's nothing established, but I would not be surprised that this is pretty much nationwide within the next few years. And I think that may be all we got. So if you have any other questions, we'll be around. I appreciate your time today, especially in spite of the rain, but y'all be safe getting back.
Thanks, Josh. That was great. Next, we're going to hear a little bit from our partner in Unison. With roots dating all the way back to 1906 and a reimagination in 2021, and Unison is dedicated to the collaboration and success of locally owned independent businesses. They bring members together to learn, be heard, and advance as a whole. Acknowledging that the challenges facing local businesses are greater than ever, they provide rich member benefits, including community and legislative forums, mentorship programs, an expert directory, just to name a few. Diana is the vice president. In Unison was formerly Retail Merchants Association, but in her 11 years with the organization, she's managed various strategic elements with a main focus on marketing and membership initiatives. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jenica, and thank you so much to Dominion Payroll and the entire team, to Josh, for this presentation today. And thank you for including us in this session. We love working with collaborative partners like you all, and this was super informative and just a great refresher on all the important aspects of HR. Just to tell you a little bit more about In Unison, as Jenica mentioned, we were formerly Retail Merchants. We recently rebranded and relaunched our mission, and we are the sole organization, or we are the only organization in the Richmond region that is solely dedicated to preserving and advancing our local business community. And we do that through community building with tools like mentorship and roundtables, provide advocacy and representation both through our sister organization, Virginia Retail Federation, and through relationships with local government officials and policymakers. We offer resources and support through education, like opportunities like this, and access to various resources that we know local businesses specifically need. And we increase the visibility and exposure of local businesses and remind our community how important it is to support our local business community. We serve as a trusted resource for over 600 local businesses in our community now. And we recently launched our State of Local Research Initiative, which you may have seen our little postcards at the table walking in. But we encourage you, if you're a local business, to participate in the survey. We compile all of those results and then share those insights. It serves as a benchmarking tool both for our local businesses to see how they stack up against other local businesses in the community, but it also serves as an opportunity for us to showcase the impact of our local businesses on our community and on the economy in our area. So we'll be compiling all of those results, and we'll actually be back here at Dominion Payroll on April 18th to share those insights. So I encourage you to register for that event as well. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Diana, for that. So, if any of this that Josh had went over today, if any of that really overwhelms you, or you're looking for a strategic partnership to really get through that, yeah. Oh, we forgot to introduce ourselves at the very beginning of this, so we're terrible hosts. Yes. My name is Ashley Smart. I'm the director of our DP Boost HR service there.
Jenica Watt, an HR advisor on that DP Boost HR team with Ashley.
Yeah, so if any of that overwhelms you, we have a service here at Dominion Payroll to really help you out with that, and that is our DP Boost HR program. And so that really helps you guys, in which we become that strategic partner to lead you through that, and to really provide you with the tools and expertise to manage your team. There are many regulations that you have to comply with, and then policies. And this really allows you to focus on your core business, on your new talent, and then any strategies and growth policies that you may have not had the chance to really focus on because you were busy doing all this other stuff that you didn't really have the knowledge to be able to completely do by yourself. And so Jenica is going to tell a little bit about how we do that.
Hi, yeah, so we have a process where we meet a new client. We do a full-scale HR audit or assessment. Audit's sometimes a little bit of a scary word. Let's go with assessment. And during that, we identify strengths, weaknesses. We come up with an executive summary, areas of improvement, and then we kind of project plan and prioritize triage. There's a lot of kind of direct involvement with the executive team or upper management. And then we work on projects like building up your HR infrastructure, starting with a handbook, job descriptions that can lead to salary and comp analysis. We can fully integrate with our iSolve system for document retention, onboarding, which is a huge time save, performance improvement plans, and performance review programs. There's really a lot we can do together. We can, touching on what Josh was saying, discrimination training, management training, all of that we kind of help and guide through, and we're a true partner through that process. Do you want to? Pretty much. What we want to talk about is if you might be a good candidate. So if you are somebody who doesn't really have the funds to build up an HR department, if you have an HR department of one who's really drowning in how to get that built up, how to keep it going, if you have some existing compliance concerns that you just want to partner to strategize and discuss, we are here. We have at least monthly meetings. We do project work behind the scenes. We incorporate, like I said, executives, upper management. In some very specific cases, we will do some employee interaction, but we feel that it's really important for you as business leaders to be that face for your employees, to have that consistency. So it's more about teaching you and empowering you to build that HR program within your company and then be able to sustain that long term. So if this is something that interests you, we're around.
Yeah, feel free to stop us at the back. We'll be there after this. And like I said, thank you guys so much for coming and learning with us today. It's a very needed topic, as you guys know already. And so then if you guys have any questions, feel free to stop one of us. I know that Josh will be back there as well. So thank you guys so much for coming.